a game. Wow. I did not see that one coming. Okello, congratulations. Wow. The Heat, again, beat the Celtics to go 2-0 in the series. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Almost Game Day. As you know, I'm your host, Sean Green. Thank you for coming back. Week 3. We're still on the air. That's good. That means we're doing something right. Wow. So let's just get right into the topic. You know, the Heat-Celtics, right? I'm so shocked and I'm so confused because this Heat team, when you look at it from top to bottom, you look and you think, listen, they are gritty. They won it. But you look at it and you're like, talent-wise, they are not better than the Celtics, right? 2 undrafted rookie free agents. Like, that is unheard of. Now, obviously, Duncan Robinson, he's not a rookie anymore, but in the NBA, it's unheard of. In the NFL, getting an undrafted guy is a lot more common. But in the NBA, to get an undrafted guy to come in and produce like Nunn and Duncan Robinson, it's pretty incredible. This team, I don't understand. I mean, I do understand. They want it more. Every single team the Heat play, they go out there and they grind it out. It's like, listen, the perfect example is last night, all right? Jimmy Butler, your perennial all-star, right? The Heat's number 1 player, only had 14 points. If your number 1 player is only putting up 14 points and you are still winning, I'm sorry, you're a better team. Like, I'm looking at these stats, right? When Jay Crowder coming off the bench has 12 points, playing the exact same amount of minutes as Jimmy Butler. Bam Adebayo scoring 21 and 10. Goran Dragic, he has been a killer in this series. The problem that the Heat have is they mismatch. So they have Daniel Tice on the mismatch with Goran Dragic. That killed the Celtics late in the game yesterday because Tice would switch on Dragic, and Dragic made 2 big buckets over him. Usually a good defender. This is scary for the Celtics, all right? I picked the Celtics to win the series. I think they are the better team. But right now, I'm going to show you the stat right here. Third quarter, every single series, or the last 2 games, the Celtics have had a terrible quarter. So for game 1, it was the fourth quarter, right? They completely screwed the fourth quarter up. And that's what happened. That's what gave the Heat the game. Yesterday, it was number 3. Quarter 3. You cannot have a 20-point loss in a quarter. 37-17. That can't happen. And originally, I was very confident in the Celtics. I was saying, wow, the Celtics look like they're primed and ready to go to the finals. And I still think they can do it. But right now, the Heat, they are on a path that I don't know if anybody can actually stop them. It's pretty remarkable to watch. You don't ever see a team that, it's like the heart and hustle Magic from years ago. They didn't have all the talent in the world, but they cared about each other and they played with heart. They wanted to win. Don't get me wrong, this team has talent, but when you got a rookie in Tyler Hero, usually rookies don't produce this early and this often, especially in these big-time games. Yesterday, obviously, he almost had, a double-double, 11 points, 9 rebounds. Duncan Robinson had 18. Like, this Heat team plays gritty, and I think the Celtics are the better team. You see it in all the quarters. They're beating the Celtics in almost every single quarter, but when the Heat get down by like 18, you start to see them turn a switch on. It was a fun game to watch, but if the Celtics don't clean up their act, they need to play a full game. A full 48. Jimmy Butler said it yesterday in his interview. If we don't play a full 40, we haven't played a full 48 yet, which is incredible to think. But to his point, the Celtics have not played a full 48 either. So it'll be interesting. I think I'm excited to see Game 3. I think the Celtics will come out with a punch, but I want to see this series go to 7. I think it's worth it. I think this series needs it, and I think both these teams are good enough to go into the finals and potentially win. With that being said, let's bring on our resident HTF NBA analyst, Kennedy Collins. Kennedy, just give me your initial thoughts on the game last night and what you're seeing from these two teams at this point.
The Heat are playing so well together. I think you're seeing that they are locked into basketball right now and that they really see themselves at a shot at a championship. I think that we see Jimmy Butler is starting to play more of a playmaker. He didn't produce as much as he could have or should have, but he's still doing things on the offensive and defensive end that are getting teammates open and keeping them in this series. I think on the opposite end, we see the Celtics, and it seems like too many of them need the ball. I think with them playing ISO ball and getting those one-on-one matchups, it makes them successful on the offensive end. We know how great Jason Tatum has been playing, and Kemba Walker too, but I think for them, we have too many players that need the ball. So I think if they become a little bit more unselfish and just kind of start running off the screen rolls more, I think they'll be more successful going forward.
Now, I watched the game last night, and really the one problem I'm seeing from the Celtics is it seems like you said, too many people want the ball, and it feels like a lot of ISO ball. How do you think that is working for the Celtics, and do you think they'll change it up for Game 3?
I don't think the ISO ball is going to work anymore, only because for the fact that I've said it before, I think that the versatility of Bam is what's really killing them, because for someone like Daniel Tice, who's more of a classic big man, while still being very solid for the Celtics, I think that it puts them at a disadvantage. And with the playing of the zone defense, I think it also hurts them because they can't guard on switches. So I think the ISO ball is not going to work only because of how well defensively Miami's playing. And I think that they're going to have to, give the ball up more. And I think they're going to have to get better ball movement to stay in the series.
So if you look at Game 1 and Game 2, it seemed like it's only the Celtics are playing good for 3 quarters. They're beating the Heat point-wise in 3 quarters in Game 1 and Game 2. It's the problem when you get to the 3rd and 4th quarter. The first game, it was the 4th quarter where the Heat absolutely pummeled the Celtics. Yesterday, it was the 3rd quarter. What do the Celtics need to do to keep that momentum throughout the entire game? Because Jimmy Butler even said, we haven't played a full 48 yet. But really, if you look at the stats, the Celtics haven't played a full 48 yet.
Yeah. I don't know what Jimmy Butler has in his coffee, but I really think the Celtics need to go get some because I think for the Celtics, like you said, they played great the 1st and 2nd quarter. And it just seems like I think what they're doing with the ISO ball and just trying to run the ball through Kemba or run the ball through Jason Tatum or get open looks to Marcus Smart, it's a little bit too predictable. And I think with Miami, you see that even though they've struggled, they've come out with a different game plan at halftime, and they look completely different in the 3rd and 4th quarter. So with Boston, they have to switch up their approach to the 3rd and 4th quarter. They have to get more players involved, and they have to also understand when the ball needs to be on the floor and when it just needs to be moved around. And I think if they don't do that, they're out of the series. If they do that, they're in a great position because the teams are pretty much equally matched.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler also said he likes to be down 18. They love to be the underdogs. I'm like, okay, I think you'd much rather be up by 30 at half than have to come back every game. But yeah, I think, what do you see happening in this series? Again, it's premature because we're only 2 games in, and the Celtics obviously are a good enough team to bring this back to an even series. But do you think it's, hey, if the Celtics don't get Gordon Hayward back, that it's a done deal now? And do you think the Heat are just that good to basically win the series now?
I think that I've spoken about the Heat organization multiple times and just how phenomenal they are and consistent they are. But I think what we're forgetting is that these players are gritty players. They are hardworking players. You think of Jimmy Butler coming from a JUCO before going to Marquette. Same thing for Jay Crowder. You think of Duncan Robinson coming from a D3. And you think of even Eric Spoelstra and his journey to getting into coaching. So I think you understand these are guys that know what it takes to work hard. And Jimmy Butler, he's switched teams 3 times within the last 3 years. He knows that this is pretty much his final shot. You have to give it all that you have. And he's in a position now where he knows, I have a team that I enjoy playing with. They enjoy playing with me. I'm not dealing with stuff off the court. I can really win this. So they have a bigger motivation because they came into this series as the 8 seed. So we didn't really have them coming in to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think for the Celtics, sometimes we kind of get those jitters when we're so highly ranked that we kind of feed into that. And I think with the Celtics, they have great role players, they have great superstars, but they are not meshing together as a whole. I don't think that Gordon Hayward is going to really speed up that offense or really aid to it, because I do think we know what Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum did last year without him and what they can do. So I think for them, those core three have to get involved, but they also have to share the ball, and they also have to get better looks and take care of the ball better.
If anything, if the Heat don't win this series, the one thing I will take away from it, regardless, is clearly the 76ers have something wrong within that organization, because you have Jimmy Butler, and now it's not working out too well because he goes to the Heat with a much less talented team and is looking to go to the finals. Kennedy, one last thing. So it was said last night that there was some fights in the locker room, in the Celtics locker room, especially Marcus Smart, going off on teammates. With you hearing that, who do you have to finish the series out? Do you think the Heat ultimately win it, or do you think the Celtics will come back and make a run for it?
I think with the Celtics, they have every right to be emotional. Like I said, they were here last year, so they know exactly that feeling, and they know exactly they're capable of getting further than they are. They were capable of tying the series, and they're still capable of staying in this series. I think with Miami, they have an amazing, experienced coach who's going to keep them grounded and keep them from getting emotional. So I think with Brad Stevens, the only way that the Celtics get into this series and stay in this series and have a chance at winning this series is if he gets a little bit more involved and starts being a little bit more hands-on with players. Because I do think, like I said, it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to feel something, because this is a very intense series and this could very much end their season. So I think that with the Celtics, as long as they can just lock in and just play who they are, they will be a good contender for the series as well.
Kennedy, I appreciate it. Tonight, Lakers play the Nuggets, first game in the Western Conference Finals, so make sure to tune in to that. Next, I will be talking with Jason Beede from Knights 247 to talk big game tomorrow, UCF, Georgia Tech. Stay tuned for that.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's episode on Hitting the Field Network. On my show, Take Me Out to the Podcast, we're bringing you the latest in MLB news and some incredible interviews with some incredible people, including Bobby from Outta Here Baseball, Bailey from Foolish Baseball, Dawson Wright, Alec Palmer from Momentum, and so many more. Be sure to tune in to Take Me Out to the Podcast every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, only on HTFN.
All right, Week 3's guest on Almost Gameday, publisher of Knights 247 and UCF alum, Jason Beede. Jason, thank you so much for coming on to finally talk Knights football. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. It's great. I watched last week's show with Mike Golick Jr. That was an awesome episode. And I'm excited to talk some football. I'm ready to roll.
I appreciate the support. First of all, it's been months trying to get this stuff up, so I appreciate you watching the episodes. First off, with all this craziness going on, were you allowed to go to some of the, I don't know if people understand, were you allowed to attend some of those training camp days this offseason?
No. In years past, we usually get, and it's not much, but something is better than nothing. We usually would get about 15 minutes to watch every practice in fall camp, which is about 29 days before your week one, when you really, start focusing on teams and maybe open the playbook up a little bit. But really those first few weeks of fall camp and training camp and those off-season summer days are when, you get to watch players and who are those ones, those twos, those threes, how do the freshmen look? How do the new players, your transfers look? How do they, maybe put on some weight or lose some weight during the offseason? Unfortunately, we weren't able to watch those practices, which was very strange. It's really hard. I mean, yes, coaches can say stuff, and we've worked to ask questions and who looks good in practice. And we always ask those questions, but it is hard to get a really good idea of what this team is going to look like. I mean, a lot of returning production, but we're unable to watch any practices, unfortunately, this fall. I mean, I understand why. I get it. They're in a bubble. They're getting tested 3 times a week now, and they're really trying to be safe and take this seriously. But it is tough when you're unable to see practice or take any photos. We got contributed photos and contributed video, but they can control the message. They can control what gets out.
Yeah, it's all a mystery. That's why I'm like, for the reporters, yeah, like you said, you have those press conferences, but really we have no idea depth-wise who's going to be out there tomorrow. We have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, we have an idea of who's returning. It's really those 2s, 3s, the rotation guys, the role players. We've gotten a couple of names out of the coaches, and I feel like, to be honest with you, they've been a bit more honest with us in terms of who's really going to see the field this season, just because they know we aren't seeing things. And they've caught themselves a few times saying, oh, I know you guys can't see this, but we like so-and-so, which is kind of a, backhanded compliment in terms of, oh, we can see practice, but you guys can't. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'll be paying a lot more attention compared to years past in terms of who are those 2, 3, 4 guys coming in after the starters.
So obviously one of the more important games this year, probably the most important, Georgia Tech had a great game against FSU. You watched the game, Jason. What do you see from this Georgia Tech team that will give the Knights some problems tomorrow?
Yeah, I think a lot of people had low expectations for this Georgia Tech team. They were voted to finish last in the ACC, 15 out of 15 now with Notre Dame in there. But I think a lot of people also kind of overrated FSU and Mike Norvell's first year there and who they are as a team. You look at a lot of connections between this UCF and the Georgia Tech coaching staff with Jeff Collins and Brett Key, but also they have a young quarterback named Jeff Sims that UCF recruited last year. His uncle is a former wide receiver at UCF that still holds a few records at the school. Mike Sims visited and went to multiple games on campus at UCF, and UCF really wanted the kid. And last Saturday we saw why. I mean, yes, at times he looked like a freshman quarterback because he is a freshman quarterback, but he was able to contain and remain confident and really, play his game and stay true to who he is as a quarterback. Defensively, they're a tough team. They caused a lot of problems for FSU and were able to hold their own, kind of a bend not break mentality, I guess, down the line in that fourth quarter to, kind of get an upset win on the road in Tallahassee. This team is tough. That was one thing that the co-offensive coordinator, Alex Golish, said about Jeff Collins' coach team. They're going to be tough defensively. And if that freshman quarterback can, perform well enough, his defense is going to give him a chance to win the game.
It's going to be an interesting game for sure, no question. But UCF, they added 2 big-time corners to this team, right? You got Devad Wilson coming from a big powerhouse in Georgia, and you got Jaden Francois coming from Nebraska. I know you've asked questions about if they've got their waiver eligibility yet, and I know we don't have any information on that. But when do you think we will see these guys coming out on the field for the Knights?
Let's say they both get immediate eligibility. We have a pandemic going on. They both want to come back closer to home. They get granted a waiver and they're able to play. If I had to guess, just based off what we've heard from Randy Shannon and Willie Martinez, 2 defensive-minded coaches that know the defense and recruited both of those players coming out of high school, similar to Jeff Sims. UCF wanted Devad Wilson and Jaden out of South Florida, both those guys, Miami kids. I think if I had to guess based off what we've heard and what I've heard behind the scenes, Devad Wilson will definitely step in right away and play in that safety position, that nickel position back there. I think there's a reason we've heard Aaron Robinson has played a little bit of that cornerback position. Obviously, Aaron's a great player and he has a ton of versatility in the backfield over there. But if you have Devad Wilson, a former Georgia Bulldog, coming in there at the free safety position, it makes sense for Aaron to see the field, the cornerback play. I think Jaden's a little bit younger. He's talented, but I think, if he's able to play this season, he'll definitely be in the rotation of guys. But I think you definitely see a lot more development early on if he's able to play from Devad Wilson more, just because, we've seen some practice film and things like that. He's all over the field. He's a really physical guy. I think Jaden's just a little bit more underdeveloped in his body, but they're both going to be contributors, whether it's this season or next season, right away.
Yeah, I think it's very impressive just in general. Now you see UCF's mantra in college football start taking a better name, getting these guys, getting these transfers. You wouldn't have seen this 5 years ago for a UCF team. Now you're starting to see these big-time guys that are saying, listen, would I rather go to a Georgia and get less playing time, or would I rather go to UCF, a top 25 college program, and get a starting job? It's pretty impressive that they're starting to get those players to come.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Scott Frost and what he's done at Nebraska so far, maybe a little underwhelming to say the least. But recruiting, he recruited ton of Florida players last year, and 4 or 5 of those guys have transferred out. They realized it's cold in Nebraska. You talk about the history of Nebraska football, and Scott Frost and the return to their top 25 programs and national championships. I get that. It's appealing for young kids, but man, it's cold up there. I mean, it really is. And when you're not winning football games and you're seeing your friends that you played in high school at UCF winning and winning bigly, and playing top 25 teams and playing these big bowl games, I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. For Jaden and Divad, they're only 2 hours away from home. And now their parents and their family, maybe not this season because of COVID, but they can see them play right away. And it's sunny and 75 degrees year round.
The weather plays a big part of this nowadays, especially with college kids. So that's a good point. The big talking point that every single person I talk to on campus, off campus, on the phone is McKenzie Milton. It's like a constant talking point with everybody I talk to. And the good thing is I have you on. I have no clue how UCF is going to handle this. You've got the golden child in McKenzie Milton, the savior of UCF football. But then you have Dillon Gabriel, who is, by all accounts, one of the top quarterbacks in the nation coming up. He had a starting freshman last year, coming in as a sophomore starting. I know he's a couple weeks away per everybody. How do you think UCF football is going to handle this situation if McKenzie Milton is healthy and playing up to McKenzie Milton standards?
And before I dive into the debate of whether Dillon Gabriel or McKenzie should play, let's just sit here and realize we are supposedly, now I haven't seen it in my firsthand view, but we are supposedly weeks away from McKenzie Milton. I mean, there was literally a 50-50 chance that he was going to lose his leg.
It's crazy.
And we read stories about, his mother had no idea that was even a chance. And now we're supposedly weeks away. And Josh Heupel's made it clear, he's not going to play this weekend against Georgia Tech, and he's a few weeks away. But, we talked to Joey Hazel, the quarterback's coach, and he said the leg strength is through the roof. And that was one big thing that I was concerned about. And when you don't work that leg and you go from this tremendous athlete that McKenzie Milton was, you go back and look at that film, by the way, you got to remember this kid was extremely talented, and make things up on the fly, and really just super athletic. And when you go from that to doing nothing for multiple months, you're going to lose that muscle. And everything we've heard, I mean, it's really been impressive. Everything we've heard from Josh Heupel and Joey and Dillon Gabriel himself, they've all said he's looking like the old McKenzie Milton. I mean, that's a good problem to have if you're UCF. Oh, which quarterback should I use? They're both from Hawaii. They're both talented guys. They're both record breakers, and they're both going to win us some football games. That's a good problem to have. But the fact that we're even talking about McKenzie Milton, not playing a football game just to get one kneel down in there and be a feel-good story, but to actually go out there and compete again at the level he once was. It's incredible. And I have to think if that wasn't even a possibility, Josh Heupel and those coaches and some of these players wouldn't be saying these things to us in the media. They would be a little bit more honest. Maybe he's a little bit further away than we would like. But the fact that they're always constantly positive, I mean, every person we talk to, you mentioned McKenzie, he is putting the work in. And whether or not he plays the next few weeks, they're saying that he's putting the work in the film room, and he still wants to know everything and be able to contribute as a coach player sort of. And we know he wants to get into coaching at one point, but I really don't think his football career is over. Just from everything we've heard, it's an incredible story. However much time he plays, the fact that we're even having this conversation is special.
That's why it's so fun, Jason. Like, you talk about a guy that was universally loved, and now the potential, like you said, of him being able to play again, it gets UCF fans and college football fans excited.
Yeah, let's be clear. This is more than a UCF story. This is Shaquem Griffin, national attention. Everyone knows about him. I mean, every time I tweet McKenzie Milton's name, it's getting 20 to 30,000 views and so many retweets and likes, and it's like an easy tweet for me to send. Every time McKenzie's in the news or or UCF releases photos of him sprinting or video of him working out, whatever it is, every little update we get, the nation loves it. It is more than a UCF story.
It is. So, and I find it very fun and heartwarming, especially when Dillon Gabriel talks about him. Dillon Gabriel is making these comments. I would think, wow, like that's when you know there's a bond and you know that they care more about each other than the game. Because when you're
Absolutely.
the starting quarterback and you're basically saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, you're like, wow, okay, they're not even thinking about the football aspect. They're thinking he's going to come play and he's going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if for Dillon Gabriel to say if not but when, that when is potentially starting over you, Dillon, right? And he realizes what that means potentially. Will McKenzie start out as maybe a cleanup role coming in the second or half or the fourth quarter, late fourth quarter potentially, but eventually if he's healthy, I mean, the reason that we have to be careful is why is he not going to play? Is he not going to play because he's not healthy or 100% or doesn't mentally have that? He said this every step of the way. He said it's not physical, it's mental. And if he's not able to play because of that, whether it's physical or mental or whatever it is, that's one thing. But if he's not able to play because Dillon Gabriel's beating him out, that's a whole nother quarterback competition that I think, again, is a good problem to have for UCF.
No, there's no question. I think it's going to be really exciting the next couple weeks, just continuing to hear news coming from that quarterback room. So it seems like there's a lot of noise from the wide receivers as well. New faces, Jalen Robinson, Ja'Kias Creedle. How much playing time do you realistically see these two playing? I know they're very young, and again, we have Marlon Williams, Trey Nixon. Realistically, how much playing time do you see these two getting?
Yeah, I think when you look at Jalen, he had to sit out last season. His nickname is Flash. We've seen flashes of him, pun intended.
It's a good pun.
We've seen it. Yeah. We've heard a lot about him. I think Jalen gets a lot more playing time right away just because he's from Oklahoma. He went to Oklahoma and he had those Power 5 offers. He's really talented. You mentioned Marlon. You mentioned some of those other guys. You didn't mention Jacob Harris. This wide receiver core, we think about this offense and Dillon Gabriel and Greg McCray and Otis Anderson, and you kind of remember, oh yeah, there's also Jacob Harris and Marlon Williams and some of these talented wide receivers. I think in terms of Creddle, he goes by Stretch. That's what they call him, Stretch. And we've seen some of these photos where he's stretching in the photos and making those grabs. We've seen freshmen get a lot of hype in fall camp and maybe not immediately start or maybe get that fourth quarter playing time, kind of like Amari Johnson last season. I think for him, we might not see him right away, but for Jalen, I think right out of the gun. I mean, really, we're going to see him. It looks like he's good on some of these routes, and he and Dillon Gabriel have a connection now that they know each other and they've been able to practice with each other. I think they're ready to go. I think we'll see Jalen this weekend more than Stretch Creddle, just because he's a freshman, but he's talented. I mean, he's a really big kid. Both of those guys are really fast.
Yeah, it seems like just UCF has so many good problems. It doesn't seem like they ever have like one very bad problem. It's, you have to pick which wide receiver to play, and you've got a bunch of them. So that's always been a good problem the last couple of years with UCF.
I will say, I don't want to say it's quality versus quantity, but you don't have that Gabe Davis guy where automatically he's going to get 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. Maybe we'll see that from Trey Nixon this season, but they have a lot of options. And like you said, that's a good problem to have.
No doubt. Jason, with the new news of the Big Ten coming back, and again now the Pac-12 possibly, before the season without those two leagues, everybody was saying this might be UCF's year. There's a potential for UCF to go to the college football playoff. Now with them two coming back, again, I think with Big Ten, they are playing 9 games, which I was under the assumption before they coming back, they were going to play about like 5 or 6. So the fact they're playing 9 is pretty incredible. Do you think if UCF does what they're supposed to do you think their chances are still there to make that college football playoff potentially? Or do you think it's a wash now with those two leagues potentially coming back?
Yeah, it's really hard to argue UCF should be in over, Ohio State or Michigan, whoever wins the Big Ten this season. If the Pac-12 comes back, it's really hard to argue that UCF still has a good chance. I mean, obviously the past 2 seasons with those leagues playing, they've had a lot of conversation heading into Pitt last year. There was a lot of national buzz. This is the year they have, look at the FPI. They have a 25% chance of making it and things like that. And a lot. And then, they had a couple losses last season and didn't live up to the full expectations or their expectations, whatever you want to say. Entering this season with no Big 10, no Big 12. Wow, really? You look at, you got an Alabama and a Clemson and now Notre Dame in the ACC. That fourth spot's wide open. I really would have liked to seen, maybe now without the Big 10, the Pac-12. But I mean, maybe we know the Big 10's playing, but maybe not the Pac-12, depending on what happens out there. It would have been nice to see an expansion of the playoffs this season, just because you have so many teams not playing and things like that. That's obviously not going to happen. I know there's contracts involved and things like that, but look at what Major League Baseball was able to figure out with an expanded playoffs because of less games. It really does hurt that UCF was not able to play UNC week 1. That would have been a top 15 matchup. Georgia Tech's a Power 5 program and they just beat FSU, and you got to hope that they finish their season strong. That wasn't just a week 1 thing. If UCF is able to go in there and put up big points against the Georgia Tech team that just embarrassed FSU in Tallahassee, you got to hope that Georgia Tech finishes higher than expected, and you have a Memphis or a Cincinnati team ranked, and maybe you play a ranked SMU in your conference championship. That's the one thing where maybe if they have 3 or 4 top 25 wins plus an undefeated season, a conference champion, you got to hope for chaos now that the Big Ten is playing, because you automatically assume it's going to be Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. That fourth spot's open. Maybe it's the SEC runner-up, or maybe it's UCF up there. If the Pac-12 is back, I think that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think even though those leagues potentially will be playing, we know the Big Ten will be playing, I still think there's still a lot of buzz around UCF and their potential to make it. I wouldn't bet on it. I'm not a betting man generally, obviously, but I wouldn't put all the cards on UCF to make the playoff just because those leagues are back. And we know this committee really does not like group of 5 teams, and how we've seen their rankings and compared to some of these other 3 or 4 lost teams later on in the season. The one thing that UCF can do, I know it's cliche, but they just got to go out and win their conference, because they're going to play in a New Year's Six Bowl if they do that. If they accomplish all those things, maybe they get 6, 7, 8, crack the top 10, but it's really looking more and more difficult for them to make the playoff, unfortunately.
So I know you said you're not a betting man, but if you were, do you think UCF goes undefeated this year, or do you think they get a couple losses?
I think they go undefeated. I really do. For a number of reasons. I think they have a favorable schedule. You play at Memphis. It's similar to 2017 where you played Memphis early in the season and then maybe you meet them in the conference championship at the very end. They don't travel a whole lot in the month of November, which is important. You get Cincinnati at home. That was one of their road losses last year. You get Tulsa at home. That was one of their road losses last year. And you open your season. I think it's a little difficult to open your season with the Power 5 opponent. Obviously they would have opened with UNC regardless, but last year they opened with a FAMU kind of a warm-up game. I think the one game that you need to watch out for is Cincinnati and Memphis, but those are 2 tough opponents, and at Memphis is really difficult, but they can get it done. I really do think they can run the table and win a conference championship undefeated.
The UCF Knights play tomorrow at 3:30 against Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. You can watch the game on ABC. Please go check out Knights 247. Jason's stuff is great. And go read all of his stuff, especially after the game. It's going to be really fun. Jason, thank you so much for coming on Almost Game Day, and I hope to have you back sooner rather than later, all right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be traveling to Atlanta. I'll be one of the few road media allowed. Very limited press box, but I'll be in Atlanta covering Georgia Tech, so follow along, Knights 24/7.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, so now you definitely need to go follow him regardless. All right,
yes,
thanks,
absolutely.
Jay.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for watching that Jason Beede interview. I hope you enjoyed it. And for seeing what my next guest is next week, Dante Marchitelli of the Orlando Magic. That's a good one. So make sure you tune into that next week. And UCF football starts tomorrow. I'm really excited to see what this team's going to look like. This is our big test of the year, really early out in the gate, so hopefully the Knights can come home with that W. But with that being said, my favorite segment of the show, my touchdown picks of the week. Last week, listen, I don't want to flatter myself here, but last week I did pretty good. 11-3. 11-3. Listen, if you would have listened to me, you would have done pretty well last week. Now, the only games I a little missed a bit, was the Cardinals against the 49ers. I did choose the Cardinals to cover the spread, but I did not see the upset there. So I'll take blame on that. That was one thing I was wrong. And then I completely missed the Cowboys-Rams. Obviously, the Cowboys are the same team. I was thinking Mike McCarthy would make them different, but obviously that's not the case. So that's on me. But I still think 11-3 is pretty good. All right, so let's go into my picks this week. Game 1, I think the number 1 game on everybody's slate, Patriots, Seahawks. Listen, it's a very interesting game so early on in the year, right? If you go back to last week's win for the Seahawks and the Patriots, Russell Wilson went 31 of 35 for 322 and 4 TDs. Cam went 15 of 19 for 155 yards passing, and then he had 15 carries for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everybody's been saying all week it's the most amount of carries that Cam's had in a non-playoff game ever, but this is the one thing I do want to look at. Pats were the number 1 rushing team in the NFL after week 1. It's so hard to determine stats, especially after week 1, because it's 1 week. The Pats play the Dolphins, right? So the rushing is going to be big for the Pats, but the Seahawks are number 8 against the run. So the Seahawks played the run well against the Falcons. The Pats are 5 in total defense. The Seahawks are 9 in total offense. So this game, I see it as if the Patriots try to run it, the Seahawks are going to stop it. The Patriots are going to have to throw the ball to get anything going in this game. They can try to get the run going, but my viewpoint of it is Cam's going to be throwing the ball a lot in this game. Don't be surprised if Russell Wilson takes a little bit of a dip this week in production. He's playing a really tough Patriots team. That defense is serious. I don't care what anybody says. So, with that being said, I am picking the Seahawks to win and cover on Sunday Night Football. Listen, it's nothing against the Patriots. I think the Patriots have a shot at winning this game, but it's way too early in the year, and especially in the month of September, the Patriots usually aren't the team they want to be. They're still working out some kinks. I was watching the offense against Miami. Though fun to watch, they still need to work on the passing. A couple more passes. If the play action works, the Seahawks will lose, because the play action has hurt the Seahawks in numerous games that are terrible against play action. So I am choosing the Seahawks to win and cover, but do not be surprised if the Patriots take it. All right, Chiefs, Chargers. I don't understand how this is not a 10-point spread. I've heard it all around. This should be a 10-point spread for the Chiefs. The Chargers only won by 3 against the Bengals, and it should have gone to overtime. I am taking the Chiefs minus 8.5. Lay the points. This is an easy game to bet on. Now, if the Chiefs come out really flat, then we've got a problem. But after seeing their game against the Texans, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine, and they'll probably kill the Chargers. Do not be surprised to see Justin Herbert in this game. If it starts going awry really quickly, you might see the number 6 pick come on in. All right, Ravens, Texans. Another game that I'm kind of a little surprised to see not go over 10. I know the Texans played the Chiefs kind of decent. They didn't lose by a ton. The Ravens should annihilate the Texans. The Texans are not really that great on offense, if you haven't noticed. I think they still need a couple weeks to work out the kinks. That defense is going to allow Lamar Jackson to run all over them. I'm sorry. They played well against Patrick Mahomes. I think this is a totally different offense. I am taking the Ravens minus 7 to cover and win. That's an easy game to bet on. Colts, Vikings. This is probably the toughest game. The mantra of this week is big spreads. This is one of the only games that has a small spread. So, again, 2 of these teams, both week 1 losses, both teams that people thought were going to be really good. I'm taking the Vikings to cover and win. They're the underdogs by plus 3. I don't understand that, The Colts looked terrible against the Jags. I know the Colts moved the ball, but Phillip Rivers looks like Phillip Rivers. That's just my thought process. The Vikings didn't have a bad outing against the Packers. 34 points against a solid defense. The Packers are a good defense. I don't care what anybody says. The rushing was solid. But like I said, Phillip Rivers looks like Phillip Rivers from the last couple of years. Against a depleted Jags defense, he threw for 363 yards, but he threw 2 interceptions. That's unacceptable. In my head, I think the Vikings go on, win this game +3, take the underdog. I don't understand, but it is what it is. I'm taking Vikings. All right, Eagles versus Rams. Listen, the Rams are the underdogs. It's the same thing with the Vikings. How are the Rams the underdogs against the Eagles? Like, the Eagles lost to the Redskins. The defense for the Eagles looks serious. There's no question. The offense just looks dysfunctional out of the gate. They don't look like they have enough weapons. They look like they took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit with the Redskins. I think that Rams defense is pretty serious after watching them against the Cowboys. I'm going to take the Rams +1.5. Like, this, listen, if you're betting on the game, why wouldn't you take the underdog here? Like, if the Eagles are actually the favorites in this, it's laughable. So I would go Rams 1.5 here, and I don't think it'll be fairly close. I think the Rams might win by a touchdown. So yeah, I'd go Rams. Bucks, Panthers. Now, I've had so many people come up to me and tell me, Sean, you hate the Bucks so much. No, I don't hate the Bucks. It's a love-hate relationship with the Bucks, okay? Listen, the Bucks, they're not in trouble. Let's not go crazy over this week 1 loss. We will go crazy over the Bruce Arians, Tom Brady little feud that we've got going on this week. I think it's hilarious. Listen, clearly, Tom went to a coach that he thought he'd be able to have fun with, and that hasn't happened so far. Yes, Tom made mistakes, but Bruce Arians isn't going to let a pick six and another interception that wasn't his fault, go ahead. And clearly Tom's like, oh, he's a coach, I'm a player. But again, let's not go too crazy. What I will say, Tom had a pretty okay game. It wasn't very good, but it wasn't very great either. He threw all over the Saints defense. That wasn't the issue. The issue was he makes simple mistakes that caused the Bucks to lose. He's going against a pretty weak Panthers secondary this week. There's no question about that. The Panthers let the Vegas Raiders throw all over them and run all over them. So I think this Panthers defense is a little suspect. Tom will probably make this Panthers defense look kind of bad. But I will say the Bucks win. But I do think the Panthers will cover. 8.5 is a lot of points right now for the Bucks. I don't know if Mike Evans playing. It came out, it said he's really doubtful. So I'm going to assume that the Bucks win, just not by 8.5. I think they need to work out a couple more kinks in the next couple weeks to really get this team to where it needs to be. And then my final game, Saints-Raiders on Monday Night Football. Listen, the Saints offense was not good against the Bucks, and they still won by 11. Drew Brees only threw for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. Michael Thomas is probably out for, at least this week. They said he's a fast healer, so I'm going to guess it's only this week. But then the Raiders, they have a stacked skill position. They have Henry Ruggs, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. Like, the Raiders look really good. I think it'll be closer than what people are assuming. I think they gave the Raiders +5.5. I think that is a spread you could take advantage of, especially with Michael Thomas out. I do think the Raiders will cover. I do think the Saints win, but I think the Raiders will cover that 5.5. I think it's a field goal type game for this game especially, and we give a couple more weeks for the Saints to get it on offense. But yeah, this is going to be a fun game. So watch Monday Night Football this week. It's going to be a fun one. All right, that's my show today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was entertaining for you. We've got some games this weekend, let me tell you. UCF tomorrow, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, for the third time, follow us on all our socials right here. Sean, MR Green on Twitter, and at Hitting the Field. You won't disappoint. We have so much content for you to consume every week. It's crazy. Then make sure you subscribe down below. and turn on the post notification bell. That's what every YouTuber says. But it's actually true. Like, sometimes we don't post at the exact time. We might post at 5:55 instead of 6. So you're going to want to get that notification when we post so you can watch it. And make sure, listen, if you want to be on the show, email us at htfn2020@gmail.com. We'd love to have you on any show, or if you want to join, please just email us. All right. I hope you enjoyed Almost Game Day. And it's almost game day. Enjoy the games this weekend, guys.